Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, dear colleagues, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Arnold Gekonge, and I'm the founder and executive director of Champions for SDGs Youth. I take this opportunity to welcome you all, and just to highlight that this webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded on the Champions for SDGs Youth YouTube channel for other young people who have not been able to join us today, to be able to join the way, to be able to follow through the conversation. So I would like us to get straight into it. And at this point, let me welcome Samuel Budoi, who is the chairperson of the board of the Champions for SDGs Youth Organization. Samuel Budoi.
Thank you, Arnold. It's a pleasure to be joining this amazing conversation. And first of all, greetings to everyone, wherever you're joining us from. My name is Samuel Budoi. I am currently the chairperson of the board for Champion for SDGs Youth Kenya. Right now I'm in the US. I'm in New York, joining from New York. I just recently graduated from my master's at the State University of New York, Binghamton, and next month I'll be starting my PhD. So that's a little bit about me. And before joining the board, I used to be the Chief Program Officer at the Global Peace Foundation, Kenya. It's true. It's a true honor to engage inspiring change makers. And as the chairperson of the board, I'm extremely excited to be part of this important conversation on how young people can be engaged to localize the pact for the future. This is a document that was adopted last year, September, at the United Nations General Assembly. It's around 66 pages, if I'm not wrong. And this webinar is courtesy of our organization and in collaboration with the SDG Forum, the United Nations Residence Coordinator's Office, the National Youth Council, the UNESCO Youth Forum Kenya, the International Economic Partnership and the Framework Coordination Directorate, and the State Department for Economic Planning. And so many thanks to our partners for coming together and joining us for this first forum of the first series of the Pact for the Future and Localizing. The pact represent our commitment to intergenerational justice, sustainability, and inclusion. And so, as young people, we just don't want to be. We need to be part. We need to be. They tell us to be in the table, and this is the time for us to in the intergenerational dialogue. This is what it actually means. It actually should be youth led if it needs to be, because the purpose of intergenerational dialogue, they feel like young people are being left out. So we are the ones to champion or to start these conversations moving forward. We have to customize it, and we have to approach other generations and tell them, look here, this is how we feel we need to be included, not them telling us how they need us to be included. I feel like, to me, that is very, very important. And so for us to localize this pact means addressing the realities we face, such as unemployment, climate stress, education inequalities, digital exclusion, and civic engagement, which are some of the things that you even realized even last year during the Gen Z protests. It started very authentic, but moving forward, even this year, we have seen how diluted it has been. So when you feel like there's something authentic coming out from the young people, you feel the pain and the pinch of how they want their grievances to be addressed. So something is very, very, very important in terms of engaging young people in such conversations. This first series, therefore, is an effort to localize the UN member state negotiated action-oriented path for the future, which highlights areas such as the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. This is, of course, again, was adopted last year during the Summit of the Future in New York, in the General Assembly, which I attended. And I saw how the presidents from the member states were addressing the key areas and areas to be improved. I was so impressed to see that. And looking at that, I saw this is a different generation trying to come up already. For pacts, most of you know what a pact is. It's like a binding document, and it has been there. In most cases, we have seen some of the countries which have not come out in some of these commitments that they establish with nations, with states to states, and it has really been a problem. And so, if the member states again have come up with a future, documenting a future for us young people, then it's only very important for us to take key note of what is in the document and looking at it detailed. And so that's why, as champion for SDGs, we are looking at this very critically to make sure that it aligns with what the young people want and want to listen in and give their opinion. So, and our main mandate as an organization is to help align this with the SDGs so that we can renew momentum and emphasize solidarity and enhance multilateral cooperation. We are therefore committed to be the driving force behind community-driven solutions, starting as Kenya as the main, just piloting these conversations and localizing it in all the counties. Of course, we'll also been looking from issues of climate stress, ending poverty, quality education, to smart agriculture in counties in the North Rift, to digital literacy transformation in small towns such as Keroka in Kisii County. Innovation and technologies are the powerful tools which are the main highlights of the pact. So we must harness Kenya's vibrant digital ecosystem to amplify youth-led innovation and civic tech tools. for example, digital tools that can locally monitor the progress of SDGs. We must also ensure that marginalized young people, especially girls from rural backgrounds and indigenous communities, are included in this digital revolution. Youth voices must be integrated into local governance structures and continuously advocate for inclusion in both county and national development planning, ensuring that the values of the pact resonate with in our local budget and strategies. I therefore propose moving forward. First, we establish a youth advisory board focused on the implementation and sustainability of the pact at both local and national level. And second, strengthening and supporting youth-led networks and movements, student bodies, and informal groups through mutual collaboration with key stakeholders. Finally, let's leverage global to local connections. It's very important. And even as UN Kenya, as a diplomatic hub with UN's plan to relocate some of its offices to Kenya, this is the key time for young people to take lead and make sure that we are taking part in these important conversations and ensuring that the grassroots consultation reflects our aspirations. We have to be part of making that future they want for us. So please make sure you follow us as Champions for SDG Youth on all our socials. Also, you can join us on our WhatsApp channel. I'm sure Arnold is going to share the link to our WhatsApp channel. We frequently post there the next event and how you can get involved. And we keep updated. In the meantime, we'll share the links to our upcoming event as well, so that we get you involved. Our second series. I'm very happy to again be joining these conversations, and we look forward to engaging even other partners as we start to really get deeper into this, into understanding this important document. And I want to thank all of you. And as we start this conversation, I appreciate all speakers for joining us, and I'll be sticking around to the end to listen in on what we have. Thank you. Back to you, Arnold.
Thank you very much, Samuel, for those opening remarks. Dear participants, once again, this is to warmly welcome you to this important conversation that you're having today. Kindly take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from and your expectations from this discussion today. So at this point, let me welcome Ms. Florence Yebuo, who's the Executive Director of the SDGs Kenya Forum. And then Ms. Florence, after you make your remarks, I request other guest speakers, other speakers who are giving opening remarks to allow that we welcome Mr. Themba after Madam Florence because of schedule changes and some pressing issues. But Ms. Florence, welcome. Kindly talk to us, and then once you're done, kindly introduce Mr. Themba. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arnold, and good to see you. I'm always proud of Arnold and the young people on this call who have really pushed the sustainable development agenda in this country. And so congratulations to the team that has put this together, including, of course, our colleagues from the National Youth Council, Kenya UNESCO Youth, and also the UN Residence Coordinator's Office, and also our government of Kenya. This is a very, very timely conversation. And so just also to really just speak after the chairperson of Champions, I'll try and make it very brief. Just to say good morning and good afternoon, depending where you are at. Thank you for joining us and again, being part of this very important conversation on youth localization of the Pact of the Future. And I know Themba, who's coming next, will really give us a very, very good background because this is his area of expertise and work. It's both, of course, an honor for us as the SDG Kenya Forum, and also a call to speak at a moment when the world stands as a crossroad. We are faced with multiple crises, as you all are very, very aware. We are facing the issues of climate action. We are facing conflicts, inequalities, and shrinking civic space, and also civic funding across Africa, across global South, and many other parts of the world. But it's also a moment filled with possibility. The Pact for the Future, as we might know, is envisioned as a bold commitment by the international community. It places people and planet at the center of the global cooperation, and youth are not just beneficiaries, but they are the vital partners in shaping that future. And so this conversation is about the young people. How do we meaningfully engage young people? How do we localize this particular pact? And so, of course, today's discussion is, for me, is very, very exciting because it centers around localization, a term that for many young people means more than bringing the global policies closer home. And so it means, for example, how do we claim spaces in decision-making? How do we translate commitments into concrete community actions? How do we drive solutions that are inclusive? How do we ensure intersectionality, intersectional and rooted realities in lived communities? How do we ensure that you as young people are at the center of this conversation and involved in a meaningful way? As you all know, our youth are already localizing the future. And so this is not a new conversation. Whatever place you are in, whatever work that you're engaged in, you're already engaging in localizing this particular agenda, the sustainable development agenda. And we know that young people have been very, very, at the forefront in terms of innovation, in terms of giving climate solutions, peace building, civic technology, community service, issues on education, and so forth. There's a lot that young people are doing, not just in Kenya, but across Africa. And how then do we ensure that we are giving them an enabling environment? And this enabling environment, for us that, of course, work on issues of on enabling environment, we're talking about policies that empower and protect youth participation. How do we better our youth participation policies? How do we ensure that resources that support youth-led solutions are reaching to the young people? Because it's one thing to allocate resources, but it's another thing for young people to partake these resources and to really showcase meaningful participation, and them, of course, growing in terms of their capabilities and their capacities. The third one is on partnerships that value youth as equal stakeholders, not just recipients or observers. How do we more and more ensure that young people in different decision-making spaces, they can showcase the growth, they can showcase how they're engaging in the different engagements. And so this webinar is very timely. It's a timely platform for us to interrogate three things. One, how can the young people or youth meaningfully influence the pact implementation at the local level? I think that's the first question that we need to ask ourselves. Number two, what mechanisms can translate global aspiration into local action? And I know this has been a conversation among young people here in Kenya. And the third one is how can we hold institutions accountable while remaining hopeful and mobilizing? So how can these partnerships work? How do we continue the accountability question that is very critical for non-state actors? So I hope that we can use this space not only to reflect, but to build a collective youth agenda that is transformative, inclusive, and forward-looking. As we begin, I encourage all of us to speak boldly, for us to be able to also listen with intention. There are very meaningful and very well experienced speakers that will be speaking to you today, and also ensure that we can also commit collectively. Because the future we want is not just a destination, it's the path we must build together. And so we hope that this particular webinar will be able to give us, a hope for the future, a hope for today, a hope for tomorrow, collectively, and we can showcase very practical actions that we can take locally here in Kenya and across Africa and in the global South and across the world. So with that, I want to thank you all. but also take this time to invite our next speaker, a very good friend of mine, Themba, who will be introducing himself. And also, as I said before, once he introduces himself, you'll understand, of course, the magnitude and the work that he does, ensuring that we are domesticating the Pact of the Future, but also from a policy perspective, from a global perspective. So it's my great pleasure to welcome Themba. And so, Themba, you're most welcome, and thank you for making the time to be with all of us here, and for the young people in Kenya who are aspiring to learn more, but also to engage in this process. Karibu sana. Thank you very much.
Asante sana, Florence. It's good to see you, and great to see all the young people that have joined this webinar. So Jambo, good morning from New York, and good afternoon to you in Kenya. It's a real pleasure for me to join this webinar on my youth in a pact for the future. Let me begin by acknowledging and thanking all the organizers for this event that Florence mentioned in her opening remarks. But I want to start by highlighting that the story of the Pact for the Future cannot be told without mentioning Kenya. Kenya hosted the Civil Society Conference in support of the Summit of the Future last year, and it was co-chaired by a Kenyan, Carol Osero again. And Kenya continues to demonstrate bold leadership both globally and nationally in this critical phase of Pact implementation. Just last week, on the margins of the high-level political forum, I had the pleasure of speaking at the same event as Florence, who shared inspiring updates on how Kenya is already implementing the Pact and accelerating the SDGs. Creating spaces like this one for dialogue, for ideas, for action is how we begin to turn global commitments into local impact. It is even more inspiring when such spaces are led by young people. I lived in Kenya for 8 years, and I know from my own experience how young people in Kenya are hardworking, innovative, full of ideas, and always eager to make a positive contribution. Today, I want to briefly address 3 questions. 1, what is the Pact for the Future, and what does it say about the youth? And I'll build on what the 2 previous speakers have eloquently outlined. Secondly, what are we doing to implement it? And then how you as young people can get involved. So what is the Pact for the Future? So the Pact for the Future, adopted by consensus at the Summit of the Future last year, is one of the most ambitious and wide-ranging global agreements in recent memory. At a time when global cooperation is under pressure, the Pact is a powerful reminder that consensus and collective action are still possible. The Pact for the Future and its annexes, the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations, reflect renewed commitment to multilateralism, meaning countries coming together, working to tackle challenges like slow progress on SDG implementation, climate action, inequality, conflict, with the UN as a platform where every nation, including Kenya, has a voice. The Pact for the Future is structured around 5 chapters. Chapter 1, Sustainable Development and Financing for Development. Chapter 2, International Peace and Security. Chapter 3, Science, Technology, Innovation, and Digital Cooperation. Chapter 4, Youth and Future Generations. And the last chapter, Chapter 5, Transforming Global Governance. It includes 56 concrete actions to deliver on existing commitments such as the SDGs, while addressing emerging and fast-evolving challenges like artificial intelligence and digital governance. And like I said, the Pact also includes 2 annexes, the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration on Future Generations. And what does the Pact say about youth? Youth are at the heart of the Pact. It recognizes youth as agents of change, as contributors to peace, development, and human rights, and as vital partners in shaping our shared future. The Pact calls for investments in young people's social and economic development, protecting their human rights, and meaningful participation of youth in decision-making at national and global levels. From the start, youth have played an important role. Youth have helped shape the Pact's journey from participating in national and regional consultations, including in Kenya, to leading discussions at the civil society conference that took place in Nairobi, to energizing the youth action days that happened at the Summit of the Future. Your ideas, your voices, your vision, and those of other young people across the world made the Pact more relevant and more ambitious. Secondly, what are we doing to implement the Pact? The adoption of the Pact, just like any other agreement, is just a beginning. Implementation is a real test. To make sure that the Pact for the Future translates into action, the UN Secretary General has established a high-level steering committee, which he chairs personally, along 6 thematic working groups reporting to the steering committee. One of these working groups is focused specifically on youth and is working on 3 key initiatives. The first one is a global youth investment platform. Second is a new set of youth participation principles co-developed with young people and youth organizations. And this is to ensure that the UN, in its all processes and mechanisms, young people are meaningfully engaged. And the last one is to establish a UN Youth Fund, which should support young people like yourselves, especially when it comes to participating in some of the UN processes, which oftentimes take place here in New York. At the country level, the UN resident coordinators are helping anchor the Pact in national strategies and plans, and I'm glad that this event, this webinar, has been organized jointly with our colleagues in the resident coordinator's office in Kenya. Some of the examples that we are seeing across Africa, in Uganda, for instance, youth were part of a national dialogue, aligning the Pact for the Future with the country's development plan. Similar engagements are underway in Mozambique, Sierra Leone, Cote d'Ivoire, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and the Gambia, among other countries. We are also working with the Economic Commission for Africa to advance Pact implementation at the regional level. And at the Africa Regional Forum on Sustainable Development in Kampala earlier this year, the Pact was part of the discussion, and I had a chance to meet many civil society leaders and young change makers from Kenya, including some of you who are here today. Now, turning to my last question, how can you be involved? Let me just say that young people across the world are already taking action, from launching local initiatives to advocating for change to building partnerships. In Italy, youth delegates are taking the Pact into classrooms. In Europe, youth organized a Pact workshop at the Europe Youth event. In Africa, your colleagues, the 2024 African UN Youth Delegates, created a Youth Action Toolkit to help guide local implementation. Let me just highlight a few ways in which perhaps you could consider supporting Pact implementation. First, form coalitions. Work across sectors and regions to build bridges and advocate for the implementation of the Pact commitments, especially on SDGs. Time is short, as we all know. We have less than 5 years into 2030, and we need to raise our ambition. We need to amplify and accelerate the action towards the achievement of the SDGs. Secondly, seek accountability. Use evidence, data, monitoring tools to track progress and push for delivery of commitments by governments and by the United Nations. Third, showcase solutions. Share your stories, whether you're promoting peace, advancing climate action, enhancing digital literacy, or advocating for inclusive AI governance. Your experiences matter. Use your platforms, including many of you are on social media. Use them to amplify the Pact as an asset to accelerate not only the SDGs, but also African Union's Agenda 2063 and national development priorities. Yes, these are uncertain times, but if we want a multilateral system that is fit for the future, it must be co-created with you, the young people. Your leadership, your ideas, your imagination are already shaping that future, and we need them more than ever. So let's keep going, let's keep building, let's keep pushing together. It's such a pleasure to see the large turnout, about 100 people joining this webinar. And I hope that it won't just be a discussion. You will share insights that informs how you move collectively as young people in Kenya to support localization of the Pact for the Future and ensure that youth are driving and at the center of the implementation of the Pact for the Future. Asanteni sana, and back to you, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the very insightful remarks and inputs, Themba, and for your passion in ensuring that stakeholders across the world are able to engage with and localize the Pact for the Future. So at this point, I would like to invite Timothy Gachucha. Timothy Gachucha, you can come in just for a few minutes as I check whether we have any quick questions for Themba before he drops off. I also, once again, request the indulgence of our co-hosts, the UNESCO Youth Forum Kenya, the United Nations Resident Coordinators Office, the National Youth Council, and the State Department for Economic Planning will be moving to your remarks shortly. Mr. Timothy Gachucha.
Thank you so much, Arnold, for your inputs as well as the, just being able to summarize some of the key things that have come out from our first two panelists. So my name is Timothy Gachucha. I lead SDG Youth Kenya, which is a subset of SDG Youth International. And part of our work has been primarily to look at how do we accelerate the work of young people to drive sustainable development goals from a point of economic empowerment. I will just quickly summarize some of the key things that have come from the first three speakers. I think one of the key things that has come out is around how do we drive SDGs from what has come out as now the Pact of the Future. And it's important to know that the Pact of the Future does not dilute the efforts of the SDGs, but actually is here to accelerate whatever progress has already been realized. So starting from what Florence was talking about in terms of some of the key milestones that they are tracking from the SDGs perspective, the Pact of the Future comes to concretize these 5 key agendas that have been highlighted by Themba around SDGs and financing, around science, tech, and innovation, around youth, and future generations, around transforming global governance, to quickly accelerate action towards these particular agendas and be able to position young people in a more strategic perspective vis-a-vis what has already been happening. Remember, this process started all the way from when we started with the MDGs, and in came the SDGs, and now the Pact of the Future came in September last year. So what we're trying to do is to see how do we accelerate strategic actions to enable young people to be at the driver's seat and not just on the menu, but really at the driver's seat of driving key actions. I like 2 key things that have been mentioned. One, Themba mentioned 2 key things as he was closing. One around how we need to form coalitions. Coalition building is very, very critical because this helps in institutionalizing youth programs. And I think this is part of what our next speaker will be speaking about from the National Youth Council, Gloria. And the second key thing that is very critical is around how do we showcase what is working? How do we showcase case studies that are being driven by young people? How do we showcase solutions that have been amplified at local context? And we hope that this process enables us to be able to work cohesively together collectively to drive some of these key things that we're able to showcase what is working vis-a-vis what is not working. We're able to form coalitions that can be able to accelerate, especially progress towards the SDGs, knowing that we have a very short window before the SDGs close. So I'll pass it back to Arnold, who is my co-moderator, to take us back to the session. Over to you, Arnold.
Thank you so much, Timothy, for weighing in the conversation that we've had so far. So at this point, I would like to take note of some of the questions that have been raised in the Q&A section. The first one is, why was health missed as a key consideration? And then secondly, we have, how can we bridge the gap between community and daily realities like poverty or unemployment with the pact? So I request the panelists who will be coming on stage later to take note of those questions and speak to them. So once again, thank you so much, Themba, for joining us today. Possibly you've already dropped, but we look forward to continuing engaging with your office in this very important engagement. So at this point, I would like to take the opportunity to welcome the UNESCO representative, who is Ngandeu Ngata. I'm not sure how to pronounce this, but let me say Ngandeu Ngata. Please welcome on board to share your remarks and opening remarks for this session today. Karibu. Excuse me, Ngadeu, it seems we cannot get you very clearly. Possibly, if you can check on your microphone.
Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, you are now clear, although the voice is a bit low, but you're welcome to proceed.
Okay,
Karibu-san.
got the camera, hoping that this will.
Okay.
Yeah, I was saying that I'm Ngando Ngata Ug. I'm Nairobi. Afternoon, morning for joining from a time zone. Yeah, happy to be part of this conversation and to intervene actually after Mr. Themba, who has really set the scene and reiterated how relevant is and significant is this conversation led by the youth themselves, appropriate this Pact of the Future that was agreed at this high level in New York and bringing it really down to our day-to-day realities countries. Very enthusiastic to be part of the conversation and to see the leadership of different youth network associated to this process. Yeah, how to make sure that the central questions that have been raised through the Pact of the Future and Mr. Themba already mentioned very well the Pact for Future Generation, but also the Global Digital Compact, that are these two a strategic instrument that basically kind of reframe and refocus conversation that has been happening. So it's not something that new. It just give another lever, another momentum for engagement at our different level, and appropriation by the youth themselves of this pact is, I believe, quite essential because it's about different things that are shaping the way we are engaging in the multilateral system. He said so also, Mr. Temba. It's an enabling environment with different challenges, and the way you understand and appropriate themselves makes the difference. What matters the most is the capacity to really build on what is agreed within the Pact of the Future. When the focus is on climate change, when the focus is on peaceful resolution of conflict, how does this translate in your day-to-day life? How does it kind of influence the way you interact with the government, with other youth stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So, and your capacity to occupy those spaces. A lot was said in terms of the way you creatively and strategically engage, for instance, through the social media. But what is it that the youth are doing on the social media? How does it serve to better promote the cause, better value your contribution to different development outcome? How meaningful is your intervention when it comes to climate change? And at some point, it's not about recreating definitely some coalition. I've heard about setting up coalition. At times, it's just about re-strengthening those that are in existence to reappropriate some of this conversation and to have strategic engagement and targeting very useful and creative spaces where your voice will be better heard. The second Africa Climate Summit, for instance, is coming soon. How are the youth getting ready and prepared for their voice to count in those spaces? At UNESCO, we have also a relevant space for meaningfully engaging with the youth. And for instance, at the end of this year, we have the major space as UNESCO is the UNESCO Youth Forum Global. And we have the UNESCO Youth Forum Kenya, which is generally also contributing to that conversation. And the focus of the discussion this year will be around climate change and seeing exactly the contribution of the youth in that space. So that just reaffirm how important it is to engage on those conversations. And frankly, for me, joining this is being in a kind of shopping mission, because it's not for us to be speaking about what you need, but hearing from you and seeing how together we can craft some concrete actionable point using the lever or the mandate. For instance, in my case of UNESCO, we have colleagues from other UN agency, and I'm happy that the UN Resident Coordinator Office was strategically involved in the preparation of this engagement as well. So we really look forward. At the UN, we have the Technical Working Group on Youth, where this conversation is also happening, but it has no sense if you are not taking the lead, if we are not there just to amplify what you want to see. And the more concrete the conversation will be, the more effectively we can move forward. If I speak, for instance, on a work related to artificial intelligence, which is trending all over, and what is the role of the youth in those spaces? How do you create or be part of the conversation, being it in developing the strategies or the policies? Kenya adopted its AI strategy and it was launched in March, but How much are you aware of what is in the strategy? How much are you able to leverage and make the different stakeholders accountable vis-a-vis the strategy? The same can be said vis-a-vis the youth bill or different other instruments. From your engagement in their development to your leading in the implementation, you should not wait to be invited at the table. A lot has been said about accountability. It's for you to hold everyone accountable and to create the spaces for that accountability to count whether they give it to you or not. So at the UN and at UNESCO, we are always very open. We have what we call the East Africa Youth the East Africa Youth Advisory Board, where we want to see the youth crafting together with us our mandate in support of our different countries in East Africa, and where youth are really at the driving seat. So we really look forward to this continued engagement for the voice, for the perspective, for the contribution, for the innovation of the youth to be really at the center. So with this view, I want really to thank you, all those who are part of this organization, and to really see how the series will move forward, and just beyond an online conversation to see how to concretize it on the ground as well. Asante sana, wishing you the best, and back to the moderator. Over.
Asante sana, Mr. Ngandeu, who's the UNESCO Regional Office, who is the head of programs, SHS, UNESCO Regional Office for Eastern Africa. Once again, thank you very much for being on board with us today. At this point, let me welcome Mr. Stephen Gichohi, who is the Youth Advisor at the United Nations Resident Coordinator's Office. Mr. Stephen, welcome.
Thank you, the moderator and the organizing team. I think my work is quite well cut out now, having had the previous speakers. My name is Steve Gishohi, and I work with the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. And I am here to also represent Dr. Stephen Jackson, who is actually our UN Resident Coordinator, but also a very good friend of young people, and I think he would have also enjoyed to be part of this conversation this afternoon. But as my colleague from UNESCO has mentioned, from the UN side, we're also happy when in these kind of meetings we have young people themselves, sharing their thoughts and perspectives on the key issues regarding the Sustainable Development Goals. So mine, I would just like to, because most of what I would have talked about has also been mentioned by the previous speakers. I would just want to do two things. One, I would like to demystify the Pact for the Future in terms of not being a new thing, but really trying to link that with what we are doing under the UN Youth 2030. And the second thing I would like also to do is to also share with you a snippet of some of the things we are doing on the ground here as UN Kenya that are directly linked with and for young people, but also linked to the Pact for the Future. And then lastly, I would also like to mention one or two avenues that I think young people can find useful in terms of being part of our processes in terms of achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. So colleagues and friends, so my sort of insights will mainly be what we call in Kiswahili mambo kwa ground. I hope those who get Swahili in the call understand what that means. But basically trying to demystify the whole aspect of Pact for the Future. So I'll start by just giving you a slight background to the fact that the UN led a process in 2018 where globally we were able to come up with the UN strategy for young people, or what you call the UN Youth 2030. And just for the purposes of this call, also to mention that this year, actually last month, we have been able now to get to what we are calling the UN phase 2 of the UN Youth 2030. So that means that we have a new strategy that will drive the work of the UN between 2025 and 2030. Part of that and what is new in that, and it relates to the Pact for the Future, is actually that new strategy has what we are calling key priorities. I'll just briefly mention them. And those priorities have been tied to what we are saying. These should be the outcomes or the results that we want to achieve, so that we can also hold ourselves accountable, but also we can be held accountable by young people whom we serve and whom we are jointly working to achieve the sustainable development goals with. So the priorities for this new strategy, which is the Global UN Youth Strategy, is in 6 key areas. Some of them have actually been touched also by the Pact for the Future presentation. The first one is empowering young people through meaningful engagement. The second one is looking at working with young people to fast track and intensify, or what we are calling boosting the implementation of SDGs for young people, but with young people. And then the third area of it is looking at capacity building and enhancing the capacities of working with youth and for young people. Then we have the fourth area, which is looking at unlocking resources for the youth agenda. And then the fifth area is transforming how the UN is working with young people, which, of course, for this discussion, I'm also very happy to hear your perspectives on how best we can tap into the capacities of young people for the achievement of sustainable development goals. And then lastly is where we are looking at strengthening accountability systems for working with young people and working for young people and with young people. Now, how the new strategy relates to the Pact of the Future is that we feel that those key priorities are also somehow linked to the Pact for the Future itself. If you look at the aspects of meaningful engagement, which under the Pact of the Future, we have the youth and the future generations. And we think that that relates very directly with the Youth 2030 strategy under meaningful engagement. What the UN in Kenya is doing directly on that, we are supporting digital platforms for engagement with young people. For those in this call, probably some of you here in Kenya have also engaged with platforms like ZKE, where young people are engaging in meaningful conversations around their future and how they would want to play part in that future or the Kenya we want. We're also looking at and working very, very closely with young people to directly co-create and have initiatives that bring the pact home. I'm happy to note some of the participants here were part of a forum that was jointly done by the Resident Coordinator's Office and the United Nations Information System, as well as the SDG Forum last year, trying to, to unpack the pact for the future. And that particular discussion was actually mainly co-created with young people and brought young people to the table in terms of discussing on how best they think they can be part of the pact for the future. We have also been taking part in high-level political engagement around youth engagement in relation to the Pact for the Future. Again, here in Kenya, we have been able to have a high-level conversation between the Assistant Secretary General in charge of youth affairs and young people, again, on the sidelines of the Global Civil Society Forum last year. So giving young people those kind of high-level political platforms to be able to engage directly and not someone interceding for them, we feel that that is part of the meaningful engagement, and it's part of what the youth and the future generations that are the Pact for the Future envisaged. The second area is unlocking resources. We have, as the UN in Kenya, bringing together the capacities of the different UN agencies, have been working on a joint program for the youth, looking at issues of skilling, issues of employability, but also civic engagement. I'm also happy to note some of the civil society organizations represented here have been part of the co-creation of that program. And this is not a program created in Gigiri. This is a program that has gone through a lot of consultations with young people, with government, civil society, and youth representative organizations to see how best we can have one joint program on young people. As the UN, we're also leading discussions with other key stakeholders on innovative financing for the youth agenda. And here we are looking at not just unlocking traditional grants and financing for young people, but how best can we also unlock results-based financing for youth agenda, which can build scale in terms of youth interventions that we want to engage in. And then the last bit that I would like to talk about would be enhancing capacities under the Youth 2030 strategy, but I also think that's also a name in the overall youth and the future generations in terms of enhancing the capacities for engaging with young people and for young people. And in that, we, the UN here in Kenya, are very keen to work with the representative youth structures. The National Youth Council has actually been one of those structures that the UN Resident Coordinator's Office recognizes and works very closely with as a sounding board, but also to see how best to strengthen that as a representative structure for young people. And we look forward to actually continuing to work with those kind of structures, but also most importantly, to work with the youth civil society organizations, but also our own UN-led platforms and sounding boards that work with young people and for young people. So my message today is that the Pact for the Future should not be seen as a totally new thing. I think we're already living in the Pact for the Future in terms of the ideals and what the Pact envisages to do. I think we can still do more, particularly in terms of leveraging on innovations, leveraging on different resources towards building scale for the youth agenda in Kenya, but also globally as we look at achieving the sustainable development goals. So back to you, moderator, but I'm also happy to hear from colleagues on how best they think they can tap into the different capacities that the UN has been able to dedicate for the youth agenda. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen Gishohi, for sharing, and we surely look forward to continuing engaging with you and other stakeholders like the National Youth Council to continue making progress in localizing the Pact for the Future and advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. So at this point, allow me to welcome on board Ms. Gloria Wawira, who is the CEO of the National Youth Council.
Thank you, Arnold and friends and colleagues. I've seen very many familiar faces here, and it's my pleasure to join you this afternoon. I don't know if you can hear me well.
We can hear you clearly. Well, karibu sana.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you. First, let me begin by thanking the partners here present in organizing this webinar. Indeed, the conversation around the Pact of the Future is timely and relevant, even as we gear up to wrapping up the SDG goals and look into the future. It's both an honor and a profound responsibility to join you this afternoon. This convening, ladies and gentlemen, does not only acknowledge the promise of the future, but entrusts us with the realization for every generation, most especially its youth. At this juncture, let me begin by reiterating that we as the young people of this country have the largest stake in the success of this country, but also in our commitments globally as citizens of the world and members of the Global Coalition of Nations. On behalf of the National Youth Council, and we are a state agency under the Ministry of Youth Affairs, Creative Economy and Sports, and we're mandated to amplify youth voices. Allow me to thank the champions for SDG, the SDG Kenya's Forum, the UN, the Office of the UN Resident Coordinator, International Economic Partnerships, and the Frameworks Coordination Directorate, and the Kenya UNESCO Youth Coalition for this timely initiative. The Pact of the Future, as has been said here, calls upon all nations and sectors to recommit to multilateralism and sustainable development. Global solidarity, and the very idea that the future is not distant and abstract, but a shared responsibility. This webinar, therefore, is a platform for intergenerational co-creation, a space where ideas are exchanged, perspectives are elevated, and pathways forged together towards the implementation of the Pact, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals. I can see a few people joining. As we unpack the relationship between the Pact of the Future and the SDGs, one truth becomes increasingly evident. We, the young people, are not passive beneficiaries of development, but as we are strategic actors and local implementers of our global commitments. I think at this point, let me pause by saying one of the speakers before me spoke about translating global commitments into real and local action. I think what is most important in this conversation and in the role of young people is that we continue to contribute meaningfully in small and impactful ways in our localities. For example, Champions for Youth SDGs by this webinar and many other young people across Kenya and the continent at large who are doing meaningful work towards the attainment of our global commitment. The pact explicitly calls for investment in youth and the creation of mechanisms for meaningful participation at all levels. These commitments resonate with the mandate of the National Youth Council, which exists to ensure that the voices and aspirations of Kenya's youth are not only heard, but acted upon. This conversation in particular comes at a pivotal time. In just a few months, the 6th edition of the Africa Youth SDG Summit will be hosted here in Kenya by the National Youth Council in collaboration with partners. The council will host the summit from 4th to 7th November 2025 under the theme Reimagining Africa through Youth-Driven Solutions. The summit offers a platform for young people to co-create solutions, shape discourse, and influence policy for a more sustainable and inclusive Africa. Today's dialogue, therefore, is one of many foundational conversations and precursors to laying the groundwork for the bold youth-driven vision that the Africa Youth SDG Summit seeks to achieve. To realize this vision, however, the support and partnership of all actors is indispensable. In this spirit, I invite all stakeholders and development partners, public institutions, private sector actors, civil societies to recognize youth not only as a demographic, but also as essential partners of implementing interventions. At this juncture, let me call on us all to recommit ourselves to creating enabling ecosystems for youth-led solutions where they can thrive, where intergenerational collaboration becomes the norm and not the exception. Through respectful dialogue and co-creation, as well as mutual accountability, we can move forward from intent to impact. In conclusion, allow me to affirm that the future we seek is not constructed through high-level declarations alone, but through grounded action, driven by the energy, creativity, and commitment of young people across our local communities. The Pact for the Future is a blueprint for youth, and we the youth are its builders. Let us walk with us, let us walk with youth, let us invest in youth, let us trust youth to lead. The needs and interests of the present and future generations call for all stakeholders to work together. And I think the outcome here is to work together, not leave anyone behind. As I conclude, allow me to say that the National Youth Council remains to continue committed to being a platform where we amplify youth voices, where we champion and support young people who are doing meaningful work in their local communities. And that's why we are so glad to join this dialogue today and to add our voice in support for conversations, youth-led conversations around the SDGs as well as the Pact of the Future. I look forward to fruitful and meaningful conversations, and I thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gloria Wawira, for the passionate remarks that you've shared with us. And indeed, let us trust the youth to lead, and let us ensure that we leave no one behind. Thank you so much. I know you've been here together with your team, and some of your colleagues will be here throughout the call to continue engaging with us. Thank you very much. So at this point, let me highlight some of the questions that have come through in the Q&A section. A colleague by the name Omondi Peter asks, how can young people be encouraged to take more actions towards impact delivery at the grassroots level? Frederick Agalomba asks, as for my understanding, this pact is focusing on youth and the coming generations. What role can youth play in ensuring monitoring and accountability? So let's take note of those questions and we'll address them as time goes by. So at this point, let me welcome on board Mr. William Komu, who's the Director, Economic Planning, International Economic Partnerships and Frameworks Directorate at the State Department for Economic Planning. Mr. William.
Thank you so much, Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a pleasure to join you this conversation on implementation of the Pact for the Future. And I want to begin by expressing our sincere appreciation to the champions for SDGs Youth of convening this important meeting, and also to thank each and every one of us for joining this great important engagement to foster SDGs implementation in the country. This meeting comes at a crucial time when all the UN member states are in a critical stage towards accelerating implementation of the SDGs in the country, with only 5 years remaining to the 2030 deadline. The State Department for Economic Planning, where I come from, is mandated to coordinate tracking, reporting, and also dissemination of the SDGs and creating awareness on the SDGs towards accelerating implementation of the SDGs in the country. And to do that, we don't do it alone. We have established a multi-stakeholder framework where we have established an interagency technical working committee comprised of various key stakeholders, both from the government, from the CSO, the SDGs Kenya Forum, the private sector, that is the Kenya Private Sector Alliance, and the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, the National Youth Council, which is a very critical stakeholders in the implementation of the SDGs on the interest of the youth affairs, and also the Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs and business, not to forget the UN agencies and the academia represented by the University of Nairobi. This committee has been very critical in the country in the implementation of the SDG agenda, and has been preparing status reports towards implementation of the SDGs in the country, with the recent report being the 2024 VNR, which we did last year, and which was presented at the high-level political forum in New York. The report provides basically the implementation of the 17 goals. We have also provided the challenges and experience, the lesson learned, and also the recommendation to accelerate implementation of the goals across the various targets and the indicators. And I would encourage all of us to have a look at the report. It's in our website for the State Department for Economic Planning, and also the SDGs, the International Framework Coordination Directorate website. But just at a glance in the SDGs implementation, at the global level, I think we know that, and this was alluded in the 2025 UN SDGs progress report, that shows about 35% of the targets are on track or moderate, but progress on the 47% of the targets is insufficient, and which calls now for renewed effort towards accelerating implementation of the SDGs globally. Here in Kenya, we're also making great strides towards the SDGs implementation. But as if we look at the 2024 VNR, the review shows that out of the 168 indicators, we are tracking currently as a country 168 indicators out of the 248 indicators. 61% of the indicators, which is translated to 1 or 3, have registered as positive progress. With progress on the other 39% as stored. And that's saying it has not moved compared to where we are in the 2016 when the SDGs came into force. We still have some other indicators which you are not able to discern due to lack of data. And I think this has been alluded by the previous speaker on the need to amplify the need to ensure that we strengthen data collection for tracking the SDGs in the country. In addition to those, what we have done as a country, we have also integrated the SDGs, both at the national planning framework, that is a medium-term plan 4. We have also done it at the county level through the CIDPs, and we have also done capacity building and awareness creation, both to the government officers and still to at the local level with assistance with the SDGs Kenya Forum. So despite these efforts, challenges still persist in the implementation of the SDGs. I think you are very much aware that the poverty levels are still low. We are yet to reduce the level of inequalities in the country. Is not at the rate, is not at the level we expect to have as a country. Still having inequalities, which are a bit some increasing. The food systems and the climate change continue to inhibit implementation of the SDGs. And this basically calls for the collective efforts of all of us to address this constraint if we are to achieve the SDGs by the year 2030. Back to the discussion of today, the Pact for the Future. I think Mr. Themba has alluded a lot on what's the pact as for the youth, with the 5 foundational, the sectors, the chapters, the pact specifically on the youth matters. The member states are committed to invest in the social and economic development of the children and the young people so that they can reach their full potential. The pact also committed the UN member states to promote, protect, and respect the human rights of all young people and foster social inclusion and integration, strengthen the meaningful youth participation at the national level, and also strengthen the meaningful youth participation at the international level. And I believe these are the part of what today's discussion is around about. And these elements resonate deeply with Kenya's priorities. And present a unique opportunity for all of us and for our country to reimagine how we can deliver development for the future generation. I know that the National Youth Council CEO has alluded that the youth form the majority of our population, and there is need now to have to ensure they fully participate in the national development of our country and in implementation of the SDGs. But to achieve this ambition, we must work together, as I said. Youth, both at the national and also at the local level, need to be involved in and need to take to be on the forefront in turning the commitments in the pact to action. Through the champions for SDGs Youth and the National Youth Council, one of the things, I think it has been alluded, we need to strengthen these engagements to bring on board more youth in the SDGs implementation, and specifically to the implementation of the pact for the youth for the future. And this will be through creating and enhancing the awareness on the pact, still in addition to the creating and advocating for accelerating implementation of the SDGs. We need more of these webinars to reach more youth in the country. And we also need to contribute towards the implementation of the specific action in the pact. We also need more community dialogues. I think one of our speakers has alluded on the grassroots communities to understand not only the SDGs, but specific what they can do on implementation of the pact for the future. We believe all the citizens have a stake in the SDGs implementation, and specifically all the citizens have a stake towards the implementation of the pact for the future if we are to realize the SDGs in the country by the year 2030. So as the agency responsible for tracking and reporting on the implementation of the SDGs, that is the State Department for Economic Planning through the International Framework Coordination Directorate, we commit to regularly prepare and disseminate reports on the implementation of the Pact for the future. And our appeal to you and to young generation is to ensure that we create more awareness on the Pact. We use the social media, I think someone has already alluded, and all other means to ensure that we reach as many people as possible to ensure we fully implement the pact for the future. And with those few remarks, I thank you as again, Chair, for being here to foster, and also everyone for being here to foster the implementation of the SDGs in the country, and specifically the implementation of the pact for the future. Thank you and God bless you. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Bwana William Komu, for engaging with us and for committing that you will regularly report and disseminate on the Pact for the Future. And we are here to help you and collaborate with you in ensuring that we make that happen. So at this point, I would like to welcome on board my co-moderator again, Mr. Timothy Gachusha, to take on the conversation from here, whereby we have on board some of our colleagues who are youth and have engaged on the Pact for the Future since last year, and continue to find ways to continue engaging. So Timothy, please welcome on board. I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A section. This is to call upon all our attendees to take note of all comments and questions, put them in the Q&A section, and we'll read them out after this session that Timothy is taking us through. So Timothy, welcome on board.
Thank you very much, Arnold. I also want to thank the three speakers who did come after Themba. We had Gishohi from the UN Resident Coordinator's Office. We had Gloria from the National Youth Council, serving as the CEO of the National Youth Council. And we also had William from the State Department for Economic and Planning, who has also joined us as the last speaker within that session. We'll quickly swing into a quick session of our three last speakers for the day, and these are actually have been very involved within the process of the development of the Pact of the Future, as well as different other engagements. Some of them have been present during the Summit of the Future that was happening, that then came out with the Pact of the Future as one of the key documents that came out of the Summit of the Future last year. And also, it's important to remember that the Pact of the Future has two annexes. One is the Global Digital Compact, and the second one is the Declaration on Future Generations. So these are very important also to bring out as key things that have come out of all supporting documents of the Pact of the Future that also young people can rally around because these are very, very important declarations or compacts that have come out and are supportive of the overarching Pact of the Future framework. So to start us with, I will bring this conversation home to Linda. Linda Kitela is a UN youth representative for Kenya, and she is also a youth researcher with the AU-EU Youth Voices Lab. And Linda has been very instrumental in the process of the Summit of the Future and the development of the Pact of the Future, starting all the way from giving high-level recommendations and being involved in the process of the development of the Pact of the Future. So Linda, thank you so much for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you join us here today. And as the youth representative for Kenya to the UN, we'd like to hear from you in terms of what does this mean in terms of the Pact of the Future or the general overarching engagement of young people within the role of young people playing at a larger spectrum of decision-making in global platforms like the Summit of the Future, the UN General Assembly, and other high-level UN convenings. What does that look like, and how does that engagement of young people look like in terms of the evolving framework of the UN? Gishohi, who was here with us, has just mentioned about the evolving model of the UN strategy on youth, the UN Youth 2030 strategy, and most recently that has been enhanced. What is the role of young people who are listening today in terms of this evolving strategies of the UN to continuously position young people at the heart of decision making, especially with the Pact of the Future?
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Timothy. Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, wherever you're watching. My name is Linda Kitela, as mentioned, and I would go straight to the question that Timothy asked: what is the role of young people in decision-making spaces? I would reiterate to what Gloria said earlier, that young people are the majority, are the custodians of all these policies that we have in place. And we're getting this from the demographic, bulge or demographic dividends that we have across. So having a larger population of young people and having them not really included, because if you look at the ratio at which young people are included and the ratio at which, the population of young people, that ratio is not fair. But then their role there is to draw out that blueprint that, yes, we can model, we acknowledge the contribution of the older generation in the spaces of the decision-making spaces because they come with experience and expertise. But in terms of modeling implementation, young people have to be there. They have to be seen by the fellow young people in their countries for them to be like, okay, so it's not an old man, it's not an expertise space. it's actually something I can do in my own grassroots level. I can model these things and implement them locally. So we've seen an evolution of youth involvement in policy-making spaces. We've seen it from, involvement through manipulation or basic involvement just to tick boxes. But where we are right now, especially in Kenya, we have seen it growing from the point of manipulation to intentional partnership. We can admit that, people are right now engaging young people intentionally with actually the hope of listening to them. We've seen young people being integrated into policy-making spaces, and not just because they have to be there, but formally recognized and their inputs being carried across to the finish end, which is not something we've seen, 5 years ago. And again, globally, if you place it like that, the UN just adopted the UN Youth Affairs Office, which is something from 1945 to when the UN was established to 2023. Young people have fought for that representation in a global space, but you can see it takes time for inclusion of young people, but eventually it gets there. And then I've heard someone say there's East African Youth, Advisory Board. I didn't know that, but all these models are coming from youth inclusion. When young people are in those spaces, we ask for mainstreaming. What does mainstreaming do for us? We are not here just to be some, show up, show face, but we are here to be functional. We are here to actually contribute to the outcomes. And throughout the process of Summit of the Future, you can go back, and I'm pretty sure for us who documented this process, and we have a position paper on this, we were very strict when it comes to Chapter 4 of the Pact of the Future. And I would love to reiterate that. If you do not get a chance to read the 64-pager of the Pact of the Future, go read Chapter 4, because then that is where everything, all matters to deal with young people is institutionalized. And you can quote that against your constitution. And something that I wish to demystify is Pact of the Future is not actually a global document. Sometimes it is a global document, but sometimes when we put it like that, people are like, oh, so it's a UN thing. It's not something that my country did. But how the document came to be was we did our own consultations in the country, and then it ended up being summarized into a global document. So the global aspect of it only comes from the aspect of all countries now ratifying and saying, yes, I am voting to this, yes, I'm voting to this. But all the inputs that are there are inputs that are from the grassroots levels. And as far as the youth aspect is concerned, we did consultations in 6 Eastern African countries, and we summarized that into a document which we presented during the UN General Assembly last year. And that's how the document came to be, especially for Chapter 4. So yes, we have evolved when it comes to inclusion of young people. What does this mean for us? It means the future is brighter. Today we can get youth advisory boards, and then tomorrow we can get co-chair positions. So we are open to that evolution with time, so that we can see actually things happening in a more structural and recognized way. I would sum it up like that, Timothy.
Thank you, Linda. I'll come back to you, but I think it's a very critical point that you have raised in terms of we should not see the Pact of the Future as a UN document, the way we have primarily been seeing some of these engagements, as this is a UN document, so it doesn't relate with me as a young person. And I think that's a very critical question, because a lot of this, and we have seen that even with the SDGs in terms of localization, how do we get this to the very grassroots, to that young person who's leading a small youth organization, somewhere at the heart of wherever they are, whether they're in Kakuma, whether they're in, in Muranga, whether they are somewhere, in Bomet, with the Mulot boys who are trying to do cyber warfare. So ideally, we need to look at how do we localize it as to the very simple context to bring out components that are very, very critical. And at this juncture, I think I would want to bring in our second speaker, our second panelist, who is called Imelda Achieng. Imelda Achieng is the CEO of the Kenya Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs and Business. And it's very critical that we look at the engagement of Parliament as the legislative arm of the government, and the critical role that Imelda, through the Kenya Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs and Business, plays within this whole framework. So Imelda, what can we be able to do from the work that you've already been doing with the caucus to really drive policy making and action on the SDGs and really bring the pact home in a way that young people are not driving to parliament to advocate for change at the gates of parliament, but in a way that young people are integrated within legislative processes within parliament, whether within the debates within parliament, whether within smaller convenings with the Kenyan Parliamentary Association, whether within engaging with other sectoral working groups that are sitting within parliament. How do we bring the pact home using the legislative arm of government as a tool for change rather than as a tool that young people are fighting?
Thank you so much, Timothy. First, I would like to say that politics, I think by now we have realized that it's an investment really for us. At initial, it appears to be that legislators are just there to represent the interests of the people. But we've now seen that there can be nothing for us without us. So as youth, we need to have a mindset shift of looking for politics and representation as a point where someone else should be the one doing it on our behalf. Yet we have people who are qualified, who know what it takes to be in the political position. Therefore, youth should change their mind and join politics. They should join political parties. They should go for elected positions if we are to stand a better chance at having youth advocate for youth interests when it comes to issues of politics and development. Again, when we go at the votes, we find that youth are the majority voters. And then we find that we end up with very few youth who are elected at the national and the county. So what is the problem really? And is it that people don't find that youth have qualified? If they vie, they're not elected? Is it that we're not having enough youth vying for those positions? Or is it that youth are not voting for youth? So we need to have a genuine conversation. When we are saying we want to fight corruption and the youth are the majority of the voters, are they being corrupted into buying other people who are not qualified? Can youth really focus and be genuine about this conversation and do youth for youth and vie for youth positions? And youth voters vote for more youth in this elected position so that we raise our chances of having our interests put at the national table. Another thing I would say now, other than just having the youth at that table, there are various initiatives at the parliamentary level which call upon the participation of the public. And that is where within our mandate in the constitution, youth should come in. Public participation. All bills that come to parliament are normally open for the public to give their memorandum and submissions in regards to the matter. Again, committees always also have submissions. So when a committee wants to have submissions on certain areas and it touches on the youth, that's an opportunity for you to write to them and they will invite you. It's your right. They'll invite you and you'll submit on the issues that they're deliberating on as a committee, whether it's the committee on education, whether it's the committee on health. That's again your right as youth to engage. We are also open in parliament. It's also open to petitions. And you could petition parliament on issues that affect the youth and it will be tabled, it will be discussed, and a deliberation will be made. That's again another opportunity for you to plug onto other and we say knocking the gates of parliament. You could also write memorandums to the clerk or the speaker, which will then be considered. Now, we have caucuses, such as the Kenya Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs that I am the CEO too. We have the Kenya Young Parliamentarians Caucus. At the county, we have KYMCA, which is the Kenya Young MCAs Association. We have KEWOPA, which has women, but of course, it also would advocate for young women's rights. So all these caucuses that are there, they drive different agendas, and they are always looking for partnerships. And youth-led organizations can partner with these caucuses to discuss and push legislative agenda and policy reforms. Some of the things that we've been able as a caucus to achieve through such partnerships, I would say we worked on the mental health amendment bill, which became an amendment act in 2022, something that mental health really affects young people. And so we are just trying to look at more friendly and more enabling laws and demystifying the issue of mental health from being a taboo and a curse to understanding that it's an environmental, it's a health, it's a normal day-to-day life issue, and everyone is, at risk of having such a problem, and it is treatable. again, we've worked on, because a number of youth fall within the category of children, those who are below 18. The new Children's Act 2022, that was also part of our agenda as a caucus. We pushed the new act just also to move on to the new constitution, because the old act was one from 2001. So a lot of the rights that we have achieved over time for children had not been accounted for in our laws. So the Children's Act of 2022 then came to do that. We worked on issues like statelessness. A lot of people who were born out of families that, didn't have the birthright in Kenya, the parents didn't have the IDs, they grew up to find that they cannot be enrolled to universities, they cannot be enrolled to work because you then be asked for a good conduct certificate, your ID and such. So we worked thoroughly in the past over the issue of statelessness, and we see the president removed a number of this vetting, and they say that let people be given national IDs because it forms part of essential documents that you need to get a job and to earn a livelihood. We are currently working with the people in the education sector to enact certain legislations and policies, but all these things take time, and we would from time to time welcome the views. We are open, our doors are open of the youth to come and share ideas on how we can improve on that.
Thank you so much, Imelda. Thank you so much. I think I want to push back to you and just ask some of the young people who are here representing different youth-serving organizations. Some young people here are entrepreneurs driving their own enterprises. Some young people here are, coming from the professional space where they're leading careers in different spheres. How can these young people effectively participate with the caucus in a manner that is representative? What are some of the avenues that you have been engaging already? I have personally been engaging in some of these avenues, but what are some of the avenues that you can, open up that these young people who are represented here, representing other young people here, can know these are some of the avenues of engagement?
So thank you. Every year, the caucus holds an event called SDG Open Day. And this year, we'll also be holding the SDG Open Day towards the end of the year. We normally invite organizations to showcase, to discuss at plenary, and it's normally held in Parliament. On the Parliament floor, there's exhibitions. We normally target about 200 plus organizations. And from that platform, you're able to have a one-on-one engagement with the members of Parliament, senators, all of them, because it's normally a day where Parliament is in motion. This year, we are going to do it even bigger. We want to do a 2-day event moving on, with the first day being a youth pre-summit. And so we'll be targeting young people from youth-led organizations, from the community, from universities, and those who are working in private sector, MSMEs, to come and engage and discuss. And one of the interesting bits is that we are going to look at Pact of the Future as one of the key discussions. So we don't want to preempt and say this is what you want to do for the Pact of the Future. Let that engagement pre-summit come up with the proposals that youth want and a communique that we can adopt as a working document moving on and strategizing and then implementing it into the government policies and guidelines. So that is one of the platforms. We open it up. It's normally limited at some point, but we normally try as much as possible to have all voices represented because SDGs are about leaving no one behind. This time, I believe it will be bigger because having done it in the past, now we realize that we need to make it bigger. So we are going to do it away from Parliament. The venue will be confirmed. Again, we are going to target over 1,000 plus individuals and organizations. So out of that, I think we provide a better platform for these youth to engage with the members of Parliament and members of County Assembly, and also just to network amongst which organizations are doing what in the SDGs, from donor to CSO to CBO. It's very important. Another thing is, as a caucus, we've also gotten a grasp of the digital migration. And so one of the things that we realized is a big gap is access to information for the young people. That is why there's a lot of gatekeeping at the top, because these people have networks and they have communication and they can access information and pull strings behind the scene, because not everyone is aware of some opportunities or what is going on. So the caucus is building a digital platform, which we will launch soon, that will enhance the issue of access to information, networking, and sharing of best practices across. From that platform, youth will be able to access opportunities such as grants, opportunities such as attachment, internships, volunteering opportunities, and so forth. And absolutely, you know, from the comfort of your house. You don't have to know somebody to do something anymore. So that is one of the things that we are looking at addressing in an era of AI and digital migration. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Imelda. We look forward to the platform that you are looking at launching, and also the upcoming SDG Open Day towards the end of the year. I believe that all this information will be relayed through the Champions for SDG Youth platform. And so anyone who's here just wondering, how do I connect with all these different opportunities that are being layered by the speakers, all this will be relayed through Champions for SDG Youth, and you shall be able to be engaged, or your work shall be mainstreamed within the larger context. I will quickly swing into our final panelist for the day, John Linus. John Linus is the chair of the UNESCO Youth Forum, and the UNESCO Youth Forum, as we know, is a subset of the UN agency called UNESCO, United Nations Education Economic Council, and he shall be able to share with us some of the work that they are doing in terms of accelerating youth engagement, especially the young people who are sitting in marginalized context. Someone who is in Kilifi, somewhere in the context of Kilifi in Ganze, where there is very limited digital access and perhaps has not been able to join this forum. How are we able to deepen access to engage or to mainstream some of this supposedly high-level conversations down to the grassroots, to the marginalized context? So Linus, we would like you to share with us what are some of the models that you have seen working, engaging young people in marginalized contexts, from some of the work that you're already doing with the UNESCO Youth Forum, as well as some of the barriers that you have evidenced within the work that you're doing. We'd want to see both the working models as well as the barriers, and then we'll take the conversation back to Linda, who will be wrapping us this session. So over to you, Linus, and we're very, very excited for you to join us, and I hope you can be able to give us that pin. Everyone in this meeting can get that pin that you have on your on the lanyard that you have on your coat. But happy to hear about the work that you're doing with the UNESCO Youth Forum. Over to you.
Thank you very much. First, I would like to thank every stakeholder who has shared insights, share best practices, and most importantly, encouraging young people to engage in this meaningful conversation. And I would like first to say that we've interacted with a number of people here, sharing what UNESCO do, and most importantly, trying to share information to people at grassroots level, and most importantly, the people at marginalized community, just the same way you asked me. So what I can say is that what works best for people is what we've been doing is going to the grassroots to meet different stakeholders. And right now we've been organizing activities in Kakamega Forest, giving example in Kakamega Forest, community going to have a intergenerational dialogue around people with the community residing around Kakamega Forest. We are also going to Masai Mara and many other places. But a lot of challenges exist, for instance, financial constraints, but that can't make us not to keep up with the good work that we are doing. And I believe that from this conversation, it is a collective responsibility. That is why we share best practices and seeing how best we can many young people to learn. And most importantly, to have information and to argue on evidence-based conversations. So I believe that starting from coming with this kind of question is a big step, and all that young people have shown that everything is possible, and we can start by organizing ourselves. But what we need is how are we strategically positioning ourselves to make sure that we get support from these different stakeholders who have been sharing with us very insightful conversation, and making sure that no young person is left behind. So the most important thing is coming together. A lot of information are there, but what we are trying to do right now as UNESCO Youth Forum is to share information as wide as possible so that many people get this information and try to use them to reason with evidence. And one of the good things that UNESCO has done is that they have translated the Pact for the Future document to a language that Gen Z can understand. And with that, we've been sharing this document online, but a number of young people maybe face challenges in getting this information to see them, what they entails, what are these commitments that governments are doing, and what are our responsibilities as young people, and how can we hold them accountable. So I believe that this is just a beginning of the conversation. I know we've spent a lot of time here learning from those who are experienced, learning from fellow peers, and the most important thing is information sharing. So I'll request each one of us to pass the information to those who didn't get the opportunity to attend this meaningful conversation, so that they get to know that what is this Pact of the Future? What are these people talking about Pact of the Future? What is in their document? And from there, just the same way as the number of speakers have said, that these things are the things we usually engage with at grassroots level. Yes, as we advocate for this on global platforms, but also acting locally. And I want to sincerely thank Arnold here. I'm glad that I'm part of Task Force for Meaningful Youth Engagement from UNESCO side on implementation of Pact for the Future. And Arnold really supported us in coming up with innovative ways and proposed a number of ways on which we can structural barriers that hinders young people as they navigate to, as they try to lead meaningfully. So I feel that all of us has a responsibility, and all of us, I call action for every stakeholder here, every person who has joined us to come on board and share best practices with us, all stakeholders, including non-governmental organization, private sector, and local, national, and even international level, to join us and enhance this collective to build capacity of young people, and most importantly, support us in through idea sharing, give us best ideas to implement, and also support us financially, understanding that there are a lot of financial constraints, but the best way to reach out to grassroots level is to us who have been empowered, who have privileged to have participated in this kind of engagement, to go to grassroots level and share best practices with those people who are making meaningful engagement on ground. So I'll not speak much. I know a number of speakers have dwelled in a very, very detailed information. We've learned a lot, we've taken a lot of notes, and we hope that this is just a conversation. We'll be having a lot of series of this conversation where we can converse, where we can see best ways of engaging and keeping the conversation going and acting on ground.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linus. Really appreciate your sentiments. And before I let you off the hook, I'd like to, just ask you one key barrier that a young person who's leading an organization here or looking at championing Pact of the Future, what is one key barrier that they should anticipate to experience from the work that you've been doing already in driving other youth engagement parameters? What is a potential barrier that they should anticipate to experience, and what is a potential way they can try and navigate that barrier?
Yes, of course, barriers exist, and I want to say that barriers do not cancel hope, and it depends clarity. So I believe that with all these barriers, for instance, you find that a number of youths doing amazing work, but there is no motivation, and I feel like motivation is one way of keeping us going. So calling upon stakeholders to motivate those who are doing things on ground, and it is not a competition. I believe that we young people, if we take this thing as a idea, as a way of learning from one another, acknowledging that every person bring a unique perspective, every person all have different values, bring these values together, we'll turn these challenges into, we're just making them as a stepping stone to a better society and a better world. And also what I will say is that if we focus mostly, everything is possible only if we have a positive mindset. So if you set a positive mindset, everything is okay. And also trying to get the right people to guide you and get the right mentors, and most importantly, we have the potential people who can guide us here. You can reach out, you can connect with the relevant stakeholders who can support. And I believe that all is possible with a positive mindset, and we can all live a world that we want to live in. And the future is good when we come together and build it together.
The future is indeed good when
And
we
back to
come
you,
and
Timothy.
build it together. Yeah, thank you so much. The future is indeed good when we come together and we build together. And I think from picking up from what Themba, one of our primary speakers, spoke about, it's imperative that if we're looking at really localizing the pact of the future, we look at how do we look at forming coalition building within youth-serving organizations that can then enable rollout of these frameworks, not as silos, but as collectives. And this conversation is really focusing on my youth in a pact of the future. And before we go back to you, Linda, I want to pass it back to you, Arnold, to just pick up 2 or so questions that may have been brought out by some of the participants here. And we see how we can be able to have those questions responded to by the panelists before we come to the tail end of this convening. So over to you, Arnold.
All right, thank you very much, Timothy. So Donna says youth leading is the emphasis for the conversation, but how can we get access to the information on the summits and other programs? Possibly we can respond to that. But through initiatives such as ours and those included and represented in this conversation, we are all encouraged to share information whenever we come across it that it can be of benefit to other young people who are also trying to make a difference. Remember, when you light another candle, yours does not become any dimmer, but you pass across the light. One other question is, what role can students, organizations, and student leaders play in making sure the pact comes to reality? And lastly, why was health missed as a key consideration? Maybe Linda could take on that. Back to you, Timothy.
Thank you. I will pass it over to Linda. Linda, as you take up some of the questions that have been asked, why was health missed? And you are part of this conversation. Is it that health has been missed? What really is the position of the health and youth in the Pact of the Future? The second question has been around the question, was also a question around student leaders and engagement of student leaders within the framework of the Pact of the Future. I think, John, you can be able to respond to that. But I also want to pass the other question to Imelda around, how do we then better drive representation of young people? You charged us that young people need to get into the political realm. So as you're doing your closing remarks, I would like you to also respond to these key questions. So I'll pass it over to you, Linda, and then we'll have the other 2 panelists responding as well. Over to you, Linda.
All right, thank you, Timothy, and thank you, Arnold, for the questions. I'll be very brief. Health was not entirely missed out in the document. I think most of these issues we could not go and break down, in terms of education, health, or politics. Most of them have been summarized in, let's say, financing. If you go to sustainable financing, you can find health sector financing in that financing aspect. And then if you go to if you go to peace and security, you can find a sector that has been, talked about communicable diseases or those exposure to those armed, all kinds of health issues that comes when it comes to war and conflict. So that was not entirely left up. It was just summed up in specific sector because it cannot stand in isolation. Health crises, they happen anywhere, in war, in shortage of finances. So for the sake of that argument, yes, it was not isolated as a standalone case, but then was institutionalized under other sectors. But then when it comes to youth, again, specifically, you can find those vulnerable youth financing or supporting youth healthcare or mental health in that regard. I'm pretty sure mental health was mentioned somewhere because that is where most of us were very loud on. So that is, it could be a paragraph because we cannot write 120 pages and then everyone will not read. So that paragraph, it means a lot. At least it's there, it's mentioned. But for the sake of just timing and because I have to rush into another meeting, I want to say this: localizing the pact does not mean you reinventing the wheel as a young person. It means looking around people who are around you and already working in spaces that you're working, so that you don't get to duplicate efforts. That is another thing that we're struggling as a country. Everyone is doing something on youth, but then it's the same thing, and we have redundancy all over, and that inhibits efficiency and effectiveness of these interventions that we're trying to bring along. So how about working as a team and then strengthening every intervention and making sure they contribute, something unique and bring something unique to the table, that then if you merge it as a team, you have one solid thing that you can actually forge forward with. So do not reinvent the wheel, work with people around you. Back to you, Timothy.
Do not reinvent the wheel, but work with people around you is a closing remarks from Linda. I'll pass it over to you, Imelda, and then we shall have final remarks from John.
Thank you. So to have more youth represented, as we said, we need more youth to come out and vie for elected positions. But then we also need to look at what are the laws that are enabling of youth to thrive in the Kenyan environment. And one of the laws that has been continuously abused, of course, is the procurement laws, where I know we had some sections of tenders have to be, and supplies have to be reserved for young people to get those jobs. But we all know that people still find a way to work around it and corrupt that. Another thing that we need to look at is the political laws that we have. For instance, the Political Parties Act. One of the areas we've seen politics coming out to defend is the gender, where we've had a lot of fight around the 2/3 gender rule, but still you can see that there's still a gap that is still not being achieved. When we are discussing the 2/3 gender rule, can we bring up the youth fraction discussion, so that as we are going to ring-fence positions for gender, we also need to look at ring-fencing positions for the youth. And that should be a serious conversation that should go hand in hand with the 2/3 gender rule that is currently under review. Another thing, political parties are really now looking at the issue of youth and disability as an incentive, whereas it should not be an incentive. It should be a basic requirement. So that again should be looked at, whereby you find that political parties which have more youth and women and persons with disability into elective positions or nominated positions, then tend to get more political parties fund. As you can see, I think the youth should not be a bargaining chip to make more money. It should be a requirement, and that should be aligned within the election laws. Again, another issue is on the employment laws. We can see our government has tried to align laws in terms of gender balance and regional balance. But what about the youth? That's another thing. We have more youth who are unemployed. So we need to review our employment laws so that we are ensuring that we are accommodating the large fraction of unemployed people into the job market for more positions that are coming up open. The government needs to ring-fence certain number of thresholds for the youth, so that we make sure that we are creating jobs and aligning the youth into the path for the future and the SDGs requirements. Other than that, also is supporting organizations such as the National Youth Council that are here to also advocate for the youth rights, and looking at them bargaining for more resources and more incentive for funds for youth, such as the Youth Enterprise Fund. I think that is the way to go, looking at what is there, what can work, and what reforms would be needed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imelda, for those remarks. Some of these things sound like repetitive. We've heard about some of these things, but I think the reinforcement is what is very critical here, and to actually achieve the pact to the future and accelerate the SDGs with the short turnaround time that we have. We really have to drill down and get to do the work. And some of the rallying call that you have just given and the charge that you have given in terms of effectively engaging with the legislature is critical in this process. John, I will pass it to you for your final remarks around how to even engage some of the student leaders within the framework. Some are represented within this call, and some of the insights around the same on what you've already been doing. I would also like you to highlight some of the work that's happening with the digital platforms for Kenya, DigiKen. We know this is already happening with as a joint UN youth program under the joint UN SDG fund. So happy to hear how young people, especially from what Imelda talked about in terms of digital access, what work is being done to accelerate young people within the digital platforms in Kenya and how that is being structured. So over to you for your closing remarks.
Yeah, thanks once again, and I'm happy for that the students are equally participating in this. And what I would like to say is that leadership must begin by transforming the present and co-creating the future. So the advice I'll give to my fellow, maybe the youth who are now leaders and leading the student organization and maybe different respective institutions that where they are, is that never quit something with great long-term potential just because you can't deal with maybe the current stress at the moment. And we have to believe that the future we are building will be better than the present. And I have the responsibility, you have the responsibility, and we collectively have responsibility to share the information. Information is very key, and to break ignorance, so that you person leading right now, you can share with the team you are leading that this is the information about this is what it entails about Pact of the Future. And from there is where the future starts from. So the future starts with you, and the future starts now. And the thing I would also like to say is that's about DigiKen. DigiKen is a very fruitful and a very good program that's carried by UN. This is to leverage young people trying to create meaningful change through entrepreneurship, through digital transformation. And it has been being implemented, and not only DigiKen, there are a lot of programs that are there at UN being implemented by UN Women. There is Girls Code program where girls below age of 25 are being advised to apply, participate in code boot camps, and a lot of opportunities. But what I would like to say is that if you see these opportunities, the best thing is to share them. Those who are interested to apply, but also most importantly is we are ready to guide, we are ready to share best practices how to approach this application and see that no one is left behind. So from this conversation, I would like us to maybe share the information that we've learned here with a number of people who didn't get opportunity to join on different social media platforms, see how best we make sure that all the youths are informed and stay in touch. So thanks very much. I can't wait to learn more from you, and I can't wait to connect with you and share the valuable opportunity at UNESCO and every opportunity that we have at our disposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, John Linus, for your closing remarks, and we look forward to engaging more with the UNESCO Youth Forum, as well as some of the other works that you've already talked about. I know one of our speakers, Stephen Gishohi from the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, was very engaged with the digital platforms for Kenya. Didn't mention it, but ideally it's important also to look up DigiKen. DigiKen is putting up about 15 hubs across the country, looking at about 6 of these hubs to be spread out across different parts of the country. And this meets one of the key priorities of the Pact of the Future, which is called the Global Digital Compact, which looks at deepening or reducing or bridging the digital access barriers that we currently have, so that young people can be effectively engaged in participatory methods of decision making across board. I want to pass back the meeting to our convener, Arnold. And before I do that, I want to highlight 2 key things that have come out from some of the final speakers. One key thing that has come out from Imelda from the Kenya Parliamentary Caucus on SDGs and business is a key convening that's coming up, a 2-day convening that they are looking at doing the SDG open day. So this is very critical so that you're able to mark it within your calendars early enough. And I believe Champions for SDGs Youth will be able to share with you some of this feedback. Please follow the WhatsApp community channel that has been shared on the chat group to be able to get continuous updates week on week on what's happening within the ecosystem. The second key thing that's also coming up November 4th to the 7th, which also will build up on what we're already doing with the Pact of the Future, is the Africa Youth SDG Forum. This is the 6th session of the Africa Youth SDG Forum that now will be held in Kenya. And the National Youth Council, the State Department for Youth, Youth Alive, and Champions for SDGs Youth will be part and parcel of this, as well as some of the other players. Some of the UN agencies are represented here. And we look forward to seeing how you can be part and parcel of that. I think it's important to bring that out as well. And last but not least is the upcoming International Youth Day. We know this is August 12th. So if you are within the context of your community, see how you can be able to utilize the International Youth Day as an avenue to advocate for the Pact of the Future and the recommendations thereof that can help accelerate youth engagement and streamline youth engagement within the Pact of the Future. With those final remarks, my name is Timothy Gashusha, and I'd like to pass over the meeting back to Arnold, who is our host for today, and the amazing team that is also heralded at the very apex by Budoi, who's a good friend of mine from well before. As we finalize, please share on the group just one or two things that you have picked up from this conversation, even as Arnold does the closing remarks together with the rest of the team. Over to you, Arnold.
Thank you very much once again for that very insightful panel discussion that we've had. And one key thing that I'd like to highlight right now is we all have a role to play in localizing the Pact for the Future and advancing the SDGs. There is something we can do, no matter how little. Your efforts counts. So at this point, let me welcome Ms. Gitonga to give us the vote of thanks. Ms. Gitonga.
Hi, Arnold. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Arnold, I hope I'm audible.
Good evening. We can hear you. Yes, we are able to hear you.
We can hear you well. Please proceed.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this amazing session, amazing forum. It's been an amazing 2 hours. Thank you for everyone who's really endeavored to keep time, despite there being a wealth of knowledge to share. I'm so grateful, and on behalf of all the attendees and the organizers, we're grateful for this great platform to exchange knowledge and information regarding the Pact of the Future and its various annexes and its nexus with the SDGs and how the youth can be involved in the implementation of the Pact alongside the SDGs. Particularly, I want to thank our partners, the SDGs Kenya Forum, the UN Resident Coordinator's Office, the National Youth Council, the UNESCO Youth Forum Kenya, the State Department for Economic Planning, and of course, our very well-informed panelists for the wealth of knowledge that they've shared and the interaction to answering the questions, disseminating the information regarding the Pact and how the youth can be involved in various capacity. Because at the end of the day, the goal is to create and tailor solutions and actions that are by the youth, for the youth, to ensuring that we create a sustainable future for us also. Thank you very much, and we'll continue engaging further on social media. We'll have more forums, so be on the lookout. Continue engaging with the SDGs, Champions for SDGs Kenya. Be on the lookout on our social media platforms, and you'll continue being informed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Gitonga, very much. And now at this point, let me welcome back Samuel Budoi to close for us. Karibu sana, Budoi.
Thank you. Our mother continent reminds us that if we close our eyes to facts, we are going to definitely learn through accidents. And Florence reminded us also that we need to listen with intentions. This is a very important key reminders. And you know, we need to ask ourselves so many questions about the Pact for the Future. This is a document that has been already adopted. Why do member states like Namibia and Germany took part in co-facilitating the Pact? and ask yourself why Netherlands and Germany led the negotiation for declaration on the future generation, and Sweden and Zambia did the same on the Global Digital Compact. So once you start the foundation of all this, you will need to learn. And let's not just concentrate as young people. We only want to learn about the declaration on future generation. We also need to learn about the human rights and all the other things that are in that pact, because they are very essential. In the matters of health not being mentioned, you see also is a concern. It's a concern not for the health sector, but also young people are asking questions. So these are some of the things that moving forward, we need to ask ourselves. And Lena has talked a very important thing on motivation. Young people, they just want motivation. I remember working at the Global Peace Foundation and running the President Fellowship Program, which by then was started to call the Global Peace County Ambassadors. I looked at how young people there, they just want to be appreciated. Some of them, they just want to, they are doing a lot at the grassroots level, but it seems like they're getting burnt out with what they're doing. So I looked at that and said, let's create this platform to amplify their voices and recognize their projects. And I remember there's one of the fellows that told me, Sam, you know what? When I saw your email, I was at the brink of taking my life. That thing really touched my heart, and I was like, there are so many of such young people out there that are doing a lot, but that acceptance email alone really means a lot to them. Just acknowledgement. At times, some of us, we have sent a lot of application, even just sending a regret email or response. Some of them they don't get, and this really drains us young people, and they lack motivation to continue with what they're doing. And so these are very key, important, even as we were talking about the pact for the future and these challenges. It challenges us to look beyond short-term fixes and towards bold generational commitments. If the future is to be equitable, peaceful, and sustainable, then youth must be co-authors, not footnotes, in shaping it. As young people in Kenya, let us organize, innovate, and hold ourselves and our leaders accountable to promises they made. Let's not wait for the future. We are the future, and time to act is now. I want to thank you all. Thank you all for listening in for this all 2 hours. And we look forward. Keep an eye on our next series, and we want to work with you. We want to hold your hand. Send us emails, request us to even give you recommendations, because me as the board chair of Champion for SDGs, I'll gladly give you a recommendation, because I want you to be out there. I want you to get those opportunity. And there's no one who can listen to you if you don't hold someone's hand. So count on us, And one thing, when I was in New York last year, attending one of the Youth Powerful Summit, we mentioned that UN should create a youth-friendly space, actively engage and accommodate young people's idea. Young people, if they hear about UN and even accessing that complex, it's hard, but they need to create a UN-friendly space. And I know Dichoki was here. I'm sure he's going to really go out there and hold young organizations and work with them, so that even that young person who is in Gede, in Kilifi, is going to feel that there's that recognition of what they're doing. Otherwise, thank you so much, and back to you, Arnold.
Thank you very much once again. So at this point, let me invite those of us who are in a position to turn on their cameras so that we can take a group photo before we close this important conversation today, just in a minute. You're all looking great today. So those of us who are in a position to turn on our cameras, kindly do so. Then we can take a group photo in a moment. Colleagues who are in the call, kindly assist in taking that group photo. in a minute. Thank you very much for taking time to engage with us today. We've shared some important links for you in the chat. Kindly, before you drop off, make sure you register for the next webinar that we have lined up, which is on science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for the SDGs. And also be sure to join our WhatsApp community where we'll be sharing important updates on those key events that have been mentioned in this webinar and any other important information as far as the Pact for the Future and the Sustainable Development Goals are concerned. Once again, thank you very much, and I wish you a lovely evening, morning, or night from wherever you are joining us from. Thank you very much, and see you soon.